Yep. Sure. Yeah. Hi everyone. Hi Naman. Hi Priyanshu. Hi Harsh. Hope you guys are doing well. Let's wait for a few more minutes and then we can start. Yeah, hi Anshul. Deep Supratyam. Niranjan Ishwar. Okay, so let's do a quick audio check. So, am I clearly audible? Can someone put in the comment section, or is there any background noise? Okay, great. Okay, video about Angular versus React. So, what do you want to specifically know about Angular or React? You can put any comment related to that. Okay, so let's wait for a few just wait for a minute and then we can start. Okay. Okay, so let's start with the session. All right. Okay, so hi everyone. Hope you guys are doing well. So this is the fifth session we are going to have. In the previous four sessions, we talked about JavaScript, HTML, CSS. So if you haven't seen those videos, you can go and check out. And let me know is there anything I have missed or something like that. Okay. So in this particular session, we are going to talk about React and set up the environment and see the folder structure, the things that we are going to study in upcoming sessions as well, and all the requirements, all the prerequisites that we have. Okay, so let's get started. Okay, so before this, in the previous session yesterday, we studied about the JavaScript, right? And the essentials basically. So we are going to use those parts as well in this. So, so if you are not, completely have understood about that, you can put the questions in the comment section and let me know about it. Okay. So these are the topics that we are going to cover in this session about React, NPM, and the setup, the React app setup, and the structure that we are going to use throughout the all the sessions and the project which we are going to build alongside. Okay, and the roadmap, all the topics that we are going to cover in the upcoming sessions as well, and the external resources. So I'll be putting all the external resources in the description box once the session is completed. Okay, so you can if you want to have a brief knowledge or get in depth of those particular components, you can check out all the resources. Okay, so let's get started with our first topic, which is about React. Okay, so first of all, what is React? So React is a JavaScript library for building user interfaces. It is not a framework. That is like the misconception that many people have. It is not a framework. It is just a JavaScript library, a client-side JavaScript library. It makes building complex and modern reactive web applications much easier. And it is a single page application basically, which we are going to see in a bit. What does it actually mean, the single page application? It like basically the server sends only one HTML page, and then React takes over and control the UI. So every time, whenever some action occurs, or some redirection occurs, the user is not like the entire page is not reloaded. Just a particular component, or even the all the components are reloaded, not the entire page. So that is a plus. Okay, and okay, so the question that came into my mind is like, why React.js? Why not just JavaScript, right? So it is a common question. So I have some code with me. We can check that out and see. Okay, hope the Visual Studio code is visible. Okay, so if it's not visible, just put some comments so I can zoom it a bit more. Okay, so I have some JavaScript code with me, the index HTML5, which just contains some markup, and I have included a script here, the heading and the card. Okay, so if we visually see it, which port I have used. Okay. Okay, so this is the thing that I have created. Okay, so and let's see what the script contains. Okay, so script contains this entire logic. Like we have selected a button, then added an event listener, and the callback function which we have defined is show modal handler. Okay, so whenever the button is clicked, which is this button, something is going to happen. Okay, so let's see what is going to happen. So if I click on this button, this modal is popping up, right, and with the backdrop, right? So if we are implementing this using the JavaScript, so we have to write each and every step, action by action. We have to define, each element. We have to define the classes. We have to define even the listeners. Let's say we have defined, created an element, created element, created some buttons, and all those are pendant in the modal. Okay, so the main thing here is like we have to do, a lot of lot of actions just to open this modal. So this is known as imperative programming, which is not, much advised, like because like for a single functionality, for just for this box you have to like write so much code, right? So it is not advised, because let's say if we have tens of cards here, so for each and every card you have to put some code in the JavaScript. That will be, tedious. There will be a time when the code is not maintainable anymore. So what we can do is, uh, okay, so the code is not visible. Okay, so let me zoom a bit more. Okay, so like for this particular thing, we have to write like a code of 50 lines, right? But let's look at the React code. Okay, you can ignore the markup here in the React code. Okay, so in React code we have node modules, public source, and all these components. Okay, and the app.js file. Okay, so in app.js file we have this container exchange markup, right? In JavaScript extension file we are using the HTML code. We are going to learn about that in the upcoming sessions. Okay, don't worry about that. And here we have created a custom component which takes a prop text, and which whose value is learn React. So let's look at the course component. So we have this component. It has some handlers, constant, and again the HTML part. Okay, so this is a kind of reusable component which we have created here. So we are going to study about that. Don't worry about that. Okay, so the main point is like if we are using the React, we don't have to write each and every step. Each and every step is not written by us. Basically, it is written by the React. So we are working on the top level API, and like once we are compiling it, basically when we are saving the all the code and running it on the live server, so it is compiled, and it is done by the React. All those steps are done by the React. So we our complexity is decreased, the code complexity is decreased, and it is more maintainable. Okay, so that's why we are using the React.js, so that our code is maintainable, and it is based on component and declarative approach. So I guess you have understood like why do we use React.js. Okay, so and it is declarative and component focused approach. Okay, so let's see what do we mean by that. Okay, so this is the official website of React. Okay, I have zoomed a bit. Hope the screen is visible. Okay, so declarative. So by declarative, what do we mean actually? Okay, so React makes it painless to create interactive UI because we don't have to do much of the work. We just have to implement our business logic and the UI part. All those, the compilation, the step-by-step processes done by the React part. Design simple views for each state. And React will efficiently update, render just the right components when your data changes. And by component based, we mean build encapsulated components that manage their own state. So a component can be stateful or stateless. We're going to study about that in the components session. And compose them to make complex UIs. So by component we mean creating a reusable part. So let's say we have a HTML website, static website of maybe 10 pages. Okay, so in those 10 pages the header is same for all, but we have to define the header code in all of those 10 files, right? So that is kind of difficult if we have to change a certain thing in one of the file. So we have to do it on in all the 10 files, right? So in React, if we create a component for that, so our work is less increase basically. We have to make change in only in a certain file, and it will be reflected in all of the pages. So there are certain um, pros for React. Okay, and React can be used to control parts of HTML pages or the entire apps. So like HTML, like a React is a JavaScript library, so it can be embedded in your existing website also, and or to create another app just right from the scratch. Okay, so things get easier with React.js, definitely. Okay, and the React.js is developed by Facebook, and it is developed and currently maintained by the Facebook and the community of open source developers, and it is backed by the giant company. So there are multiple resources. Okay, and one of the most important aspects of React is the you can create components, reusable components, which are like custom reusable elements to quickly and efficiently build user interfaces. So let's say if you are creating components, it can be used in multiple places. So it overall, reduces the development time, right? It also streamlines how data is stored and handled using by making use of states and props. So we are going to look, each and every technical term like the state, props, components, custom reusable elements. So we are going to look into that. Okay. Okay. So I guess we can move ahead with the next slide. If there is any uh, question we have. Yes, React as leveragation. Okay, PHP is not in the scope of this particular session or course. No, the backend is not in the scope of this session or in any other session for now. Okay, so moving further, Node Package Manager. Okay, so we are learning about the React, but why do we require the Node Package Manager? I don't know, but let's see. Okay, so first of all, it is the world's largest registry and free to use. It is, open source. Developers use NPM to share software. So let's say if you have created a reusable software and want to, distribute it across multiple users, so you can just register in the NPM registry, and you know, uh, you have to do some, I don't know, forms or something like that, but you can upload your software so that it can be used by many of the developers like we have. Okay, so npm is shipped automatically with node.js, and all npm packages are defined in package.json, and content of this file is in json format. So package.json basically contain all the dependencies that we have, and the mandatory name and version are the mandatory key value pair in this file. It is used to manage the dependencies and install them. So let's say if there are multiple users, multiple developers working on the project, okay, and let's say if you are not using npm, you are using some other thing, just hypothetically assuming. So let's say there is a developer A installed something, and all the other developers don't know what they have installed, right? So it might be little confusing to maintain the code. So it's better to use the npm to to manage all the dependencies. So let's see, and it is also required for the React, because for running the React code locally and for building the React part for production. Okay, so let's see first the installation of. Okay, so there are two ways you can install Node.js: by using the NVM, which is Node Version Manager, or by just directly visiting the Node.js website, official website. So you can either just download it from here, the latest stable version, or you can install it via NVM, which is also very quick. Let me zoom it a bit. So you just have to download the script, NVM install script via curl. Okay, so you can do it in Windows, Mac OS, or Linux. Once it is installed, you can check the version. Okay, then you can follow these commands. We'll be adding this resource in the description box if you guys want to check it out. And once the node is installed, the npm is shipped it with automatically. So once you have installed, then you can check it by just doing node minus v. I have this version, npm minus v, which is 6.10.3, and npx. Okay, so we will see the difference between npm and npx in a bit. Okay, so this is what we have. Okay, so you have to install the node in order to use the npm. Okay, great. Okay, so now we have npm and npx. Okay, so npx is basically node package executor, which is used to basically execute the npm packages. Okay, so let's look at what npx is. Yeah, so it stands for node package execute, and it comes with npm 5.2. Okay, and it is an nph package runner to execute any package, and without even installing the package globally. So it helps us. Let's say in the upcoming slides we are going to learn about the installation of React. Okay, so there is a create React app, so we can see it here. To use the create React app, npm commands, like, we have to globally install it, but it is not preferred much because of the versioning issues. Because let's say if a new version is released, you have to update it every time, but using the npx, the latest version is installed. Okay, and it is only for the single use. So it is already shipped with the npm 5.2 or greater. So either way, you can install it by using this command, npm install -g for the global flag, and npx. Okay, so moving further. Okay, React app structure and setup. Okay, so should I go with React or Django? React is for the front end and Django is for the back end. So you can go for both of them step by step. So either you can pick Django initially or later, but you can go for both of them. It's totally up to you whether you're inclined towards back end or front end. And Aniket. So how many topics? So basically, we are going to talk about the environment and the folder structure in this particular session. And in upcoming sessions, we are going to go in depth of all the components. We're going to show the roadmap in the upcoming slides, maybe in 10 to 15 minutes. Okay. Okay, so let's look at the setup and the environment. Okay, so we will be using the create React app module. So basically, we can create a React app right from the scratch, or by using a third-party app, which is React app, which is also backed by and created by the Facebook. Okay, it works on macOS, Windows, and Linux as well. Okay, so in the previous slide, we studied about the NPM and NPX, right? So we can install the Create React app globally in our system, but however, it is not recommended due to the versioning issues. So we can make use of NPX to ensure that whenever we are initializing a new app, new React app, so we are installing it with the latest version. Okay, and the requirement for this is Node 10.16. So whenever you install your node, you can check the version by using this command, node -v. Okay, and the installation done by the create React app, gives us a simple set of files and folders, does not make it a complicated structure. It totally up to us how complicated we want it to be. Okay, so we are going to create a folder structure, so like to keep our logic separated, keep it as expanded as simplified as possible. Okay, let's look at the documentation of create React app. Okay, let's close all of these. So this is the repository of Create React App by Facebook. Okay, let's. I hope the screen is visible. Okay, so what we can do. So create React apps with no build configuration, just a simple file structure. It works on Mac OS, Windows, and Linux, all of these three operating systems. Okay, so let's create our first app using this. Okay, so as I have installed, NPM is already installed in my machine. Okay, so let's create an app. NPX create React app is the package name, and the name I want to give to my folder. It's a React tutorial. Okay, so once I hit enter, uh, some packages are downloaded from the NPM registry. Let's see. So as you can see, like installing React DOM, React scripts with CRA template, right? So these three are the major, main packages, main modules that we require for React. Let's wait for a few minutes or seconds, I guess. Okay, so meanwhile, we can check out the documentation here. Yeah. So they mentioned it too, like instead of installing the Create React app globally, they can make use of the NPX. And by default, like whenever we run a React code, it is, by default, it uses 3000 port. We can change it if we want to. Let's say if we are running multiple apps. So we can, change it according to our needs based on like whichever port we want to run. Okay. Let's see. Okay, still downloading. I guess net is a bit slow. No issues. Okay, let's start it creating a React app. Okay, so you can go through the documentation here and learn about it. Because like once you start coding, like before coding, you should know like the documentation basically, right? So we have some alternatives here. Okay, let's see. Still downloading. Okay, so meanwhile we can have some questions if we have. React or Angular. It totally depends on your usage or requirement. React is for medium size or fairly large applications, but not for enterprise level applications, according to me. But you can, however, use it for any sort of applications. Angular is basically a framework, a full-fledged framework based on MVC, and it is a proper structured and it can be used for enterprise level applications also. Okay, and non-stack is good for React plus Django. Again, it's totally on your requirements. Like if you are good with Python, you can go with Django, and if you are good with JavaScript and if your requirement allows, you can go with the MERN stack as well. Okay, do we get jobs with no Django? Yeah, definitely. Like Django is also in demand. No, React is combined with Node as well as Django. So don't worry about that. How frequent will be the sessions? Hopefully every week, weekends basically, Saturday, Sunday. Best framework. React is not a framework. Okay, how to install it with Yarn. Okay, so the link which I have here, just a second. Like if you go, no, this not this one here. I guess you can, if you check out this documentation, you can find out, you can also install it with Yarn. Okay. Yes, we are going to build practical application in this tutorial as well. Not in this particular session, but in the upcoming sessions, step by step. Okay, so I guess our package is ready. Okay, so let's and open it. Okay, so let me put in this. Okay, so this is the installed app, React app. Okay, so let's start it and see. So for starting the application, we have to run the npm start command. That is why also npm is important. Okay. So by default, 3000 port we have. So let's see, 3000 port. Okay, so we have our React app here. Great. Right. Seems good to me. Okay, so first of all, let's remove the files we don't require. Let's clean up our code. Okay. So we don't require this. Like if you require testing, you may have to keep these files as well. Okay. Let's remove the web vital setup test. Okay. Let's remove it from here as well. Here as well. Okay, let's save and see. Still works the same. Okay, so let's look at the default folder structure here. So we have the node modules which contain all the packages that are installed, that is installed by the npm. Okay, so make sure like if you are using the versioning tool git, then make sure you have the node modules hidden from the git repository. Otherwise it will be a the node modules on your main repository is not good. Okay, the public folder contains all like the fav icon which is shown in the browser, a few logos, the manifest file, and robots.txt for the crawling and the ad purposes. And in index.html file, this is the main file. As React is a single page application, so all the things are done by this file. Okay, so you can add scripts or some third party links here just as regular HTML file. And this is our main container, main root container here. Okay, and we have this HTML file. Okay, now the source folder which contains our main code. Okay, now we have this index.js which contains few code which in turns includes app component here. This is a import and this is the ES6 syntax. Okay, now this further contains some code, right? HTML code in our JavaScript file, right? Weird syntax. And there is some CSS files which is also included here, right? Index.css and app.css in this file. Okay, and the git ignore to ignore all the files that we don't wish to push into the repository. The package.json which contain all the dependencies the name of our app, the version, and the private thing, the scripts that we can run. If like initially we have run the npm start, right, which is the shorthand for like npm React script start. Similarly, if we want to build the app for the production, we can just simply run npm build for testing for this command. For rejecting the app, we can use this command, ESLint configurations, browsers list. So there are like many things in the packet.json, which is very crucial if you multiple developers or even if a single developer is working on a project. And the README file will contain all the documentation if there is any. Okay. Okay, so let's. Okay, so first of all, let's go through this. Then we can move with the folder structure part. Okay, so React. So this is the entry point in our app. Okay, React is the entry point to our app. Now React DOM. That is the key point here. Okay, so React DOM basically specify DOM specific methods. That can be used at our top level API. So let's see what is React DOM. Okay. You can go through the documentations. Okay. So it provides DOM specific methods that can be used at the top level of your app, and an escape hatch to get outside of your React model. So these are the some methods that is provided by the React DOM. Okay, render, hydrate, unmount component in node, find DOM node, create portal, right? So the main thing we can see here is this. React DOM.render. It basically controls the content of your container node. It does not affect the container node. Instead, it whenever, like, let's say if there is some code present in your container node, it will replace all the code initially. Then it will update. Then the React will take over and update the contents inside the container node dynamically. So by container node, we mean this node, the ID root. You can define it like with any ID you want to and change the ID here. So we can see like we are getting the ID here and render. Like this code is being rendered inside this element. Okay. So this is basically what it is doing. Okay. So you can go through the entire documentation if you want to. I have told you the gist part, the main part here. Okay. So these are all the other methods that we can use. Okay. Okay, so if we are talking about the DOM, let's talk about the virtual DOM as well, which React uses to optimize its performance basically. So we have talked about the document object model in the first session. Okay, so document object model is just another representation of our HTML, right? It is a tree-like structure containing nodes and parent, and it is a hierarchy basically, right? So whenever like certain operations are done in DOM, it becomes quite expensive. Like if we are frequently updating the DOM, it becomes quite expensive, to change each and every element. Like whenever there is an element change, so all its childrens are being re-rendered. So that's make it quite slow and expensive. Okay, so virtual DOM is basically virtual representation of the DOM. It is not the actual DOM, just the virtual representation, and which uses a concept of diffing. The technical term is diffing, which basically means comparing it with the previous virtual DOM, so that whenever there is a change state occur, so like the changes are compared, diff, and then after like a virtual tree is transformed, then it is reflected into the real DOM. So React make the use of this virtual DOM concept to efficiently update to basically efficiently update the real DOM, and in the best possible optimized way. Okay, so this is all about the virtual DOM, and I have a resource for that also. Just a second. If you want to like go throughout this. So you can check out this resource as well. Going to put that in the description as well. Okay, so moving towards this. Okay, so we have seen like the DOM part, and so let's look at the folder structure which we are going to use. Okay, okay, so React strict mode. No, React strict mode is not necessary. Basically, React strict mode is not necessary. If we remove it, it works in the same way. But it is preferred because let's say if there are some potential problems, warnings, or some, as JavaScript is a weakly typed language. So if there is some, a potential problems or something is missing, so it will give you a warning or checks. It does not works in production though. It works only in development. So you can like use it or remove it, totally up to you. Okay. Okay. So let's define the folder structure that we are going to use. Okay. Okay. So let's remove these files also. Okay. So instead of removing, let's first add the folders. That's it. Components. Okay. So instead of adding each and every folder by using VS Code, we can directly make use of the CLI, right? Directory. So we have our folders here. Okay, so let me give you a brief of the working of each and every folder. Okay. So assets will contain all the static media that we are going to have in our project. Let's say we have some images, the logo, or something like that. Anything static we can put in the assets and then import in the relative components or pages. Okay. Now the components is going to have reusable components which we often use in certain pages layout. So let's say we have the header, we can put it in this particular folder, the sidebar or the footer, or some components which are reusable, right? The config, as the name is descriptive enough, this will contain all the configurations which we are going to have in our app. Okay. And the pages will contain, let's say we have some routes, so it will be basically the container of all the routes, like let's say we have home, dashboard, or some pages like that. So each page will have their dedicated pages. Basically the routes will contain all the routes that our application is going to have. It can have multiple different files. And the services basically a term taken from the Angular, right? It will contain all the asynchronous code, like the API calls, the third party APIs which we are going to integrate. The styles will contain all the style sheets basically. So if you are using SCSS or CSS, you can put it inside this folder. And the util folder will contain all the utility functions that you are going to use. Let's say we have some utility function like date conversion or like a handling input or something like that. You can define in this folder in a file and export it. So like it is centralized and can be used anywhere throughout your app, right? Okay, so let's move the CSS in this. Okay, we also have to change the import statement here, right? Similarly in this file, save it. I guess it works the same way. Yeah. Okay, so let's write our first code of hello world, obviously. Okay, so let's remove this file because we don't need it anymore. And we can also remove it from here also. Just put a React statement here, entry point, right? Also remove this code. see how it looks. Our first hello world code. So we have defined like how it is working. Like we have called this app component here, and it is further appended to our root. We can check it out. Let's say, okay, let me zoom it a bit. So as we can see, like ID root, this we this particular ID we have it in the HTML file index.html. Now this is our this code which is being called here and in turn appended to the root, right? So this is how it works, and we are going to create an application, a practical application, okay, which will cover all the topics. Okay, I guess we have wrote our first React code. Okay, so any questions so far? You can also store media. Yeah, definitely you can store your media in public folder if you have, or you can use any third party like S3 Cloudinary to store your static assets and then use the URL in your code. That is much more preferable. But if you want to use a static media, you can do it. No issues. Okay. Best way to learn React. Yeah, you can learn React in this session. We are also talking about the React in upcoming sessions, or internet is full of resources. You can even you can visit the official React documentation and check that out step by step. Right. Okay, so moving further. Okay, so the roadmap. Okay. Okay, so overview. We have covered the overview, the setup. The setup we have done here, right? The setup is done. So from the next sessions, we are going to create our app. Like we are going to learn about the JSX, which is the power of React. Like the weird syntax we are seeing HTML in our JavaScript code. So that is JSX. We are going to learn about that, the component system. We are going to learn some patterns that we can follow to make our apps much more maintainable, easy to use, easy to read. As a developer, the main concern is the readability, right? The form handling part, the hooks. So we are going to talk about few of the hooks that are majorly used, which we are going to talk about in that session only. Okay. Okay. So I mentioned form handling twice. Okay. So let me remove it. Okay. And we are also going to integrate the APIs, HTTP calls, asynchronous calls. So basically to save data, to fetch data, or even to delete the data, the routing, so that we can route from one page to another page without reloading the complete app. And finally, we are going to, uh, are done with our app, done with our project. So like in each session, we are going to work on the app itself other than from the theory. So that will be a plus for us. Okay. Okay. So this is the roadmap we are going to follow. Sorry. Okay. So which kind of app we are going to make? Okay, so we have two apps, To-Do app or expense tracker. So if any of you interested in the poll, you can say whether you want a To-Do app or the expense tracker app. Although I have created a dummy app, which I'm going to show you in a bit. Okay, you started with Next.js. Is it good to do so? Now, before Next.js, it is advised to at least go through React.js documentation and learn about it a bit. Is there any difference between pages and components? Yeah, definitely. Like in the components, we are going to have only the components, the reusable components, which we can use in various different pages. Let's say component header. Header is you like we have multiple pages, home, dashboard, maybe article page, or various kind of pages. So we can use that header component in our multiple pages, but we have defined that header in our component. So it is a kind of reusable component here, right? Yeah, Charles. In 17 point, in the 17 plus version, we don't have to import React, but it is a good practice to import it explicitly. It is totally up to you. Anyway, expense tracker. Okay, so I have created the app, a dummy app, although it is not completed fully here, but I can show you which we are going to build. So this is the app which we are going to create hopefully in the upcoming sessions as well. So we have a form here, although I know like the UI is not much good, but it is you know a great way to start with React. So we can also like progressively improve this application. No issues there. So like the tech stack, hopefully we are going to use like the React, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, obviously, and the Firebase for storing the data. Okay, and the Firebase tools for like interacting with the Firebase Firestore. Okay, and so we have this form. We can add the expense and the transactions here, which is basically fetching all the data from the Firebase Firestore and listing all the things and the amount which is calculated on the go. We have some actions like this is basically a CRUD application: create, read, update, and delete. So this is basically the listing of all the things. We can even delete a particular transaction, or if we want to edit it, we can edit it. So we are going to create this application. Hopefully, it will be fun and like all the concepts will be clear on the go. Okay. Although like in the upcoming sessions, going to like uh, show you like the complete flow diagram which we are going to use. So because like before creating any kind of application, you should have a like prior documentation, prior things you have in mind, so that the development phase is can be as smooth as possible. Okay, so after roadmap we have these resources. So going to like mention all of these resources in the description. If you guys want to follow, you can check it out. Okay, so which is more easier, Angular or React? Angular make use of TypeScript. So if you don't know anything about TypeScript, it is going to be a bit difficult for you because you have to learn the TypeScript first initially. Although like TypeScript is not, you know, much of a headache, but you have to learn it because it is a strongly typed language. Whereas React is just based on the JavaScript. You have to use the JavaScript. If you know JavaScript, you can go ahead with the React. Okay. How can we maintain large components? Yeah, the components, the main thing about components is we should make it as simplified as possible. So let's say if you have a large component, you can break it down into multiple components and then fetch it. So it will be much more easy to maintain as well. For large application, is there any modules? So yeah, you can define certain modules. However, all the things will be loaded. We can look at the lazy loading in the upcoming sessions as well. And like in Angular, this comes out of the box, the module system. Is this application good to put you on CV? Yeah, like if you are going to put in your like the project done by you or the sample project, you can put it, no issues. You can even host it on your like GitHub or I guess Firebase even. So if you guys want, like we can do also the deployment phase as well. It is not going to take much of that time. Okay, so I guess we are done with all the slides that we want to cover in this particular session. Great. So from the next session onwards, we are going to do some coding and coding and create this particular app, hopefully. And we'll learn all the topics that we have discussed in the roadmap. Okay, so if you guys have any sort of questions, we can have it. Otherwise, we can make this session over. Okay, I guess we are done with all the questions. Okay, so guys, this is all for this session. Hope this session is productive for you guys as well as it is for me. So let's meet next weekend and talk about the React.js furthermore, covering all other topics. Okay, so bye guys, stay safe. Okay.